city of lights blurred into a streak of grey outside the cracked window of Ella Rivera's apartment. Inside, silence pressed like a weight. Her breath fogged the glass as she sat curled on the edge of her mattress. No couch, no table, just the basics of survival, watching headlights sweep by like ghosts she couldn't follow. In her lap, a yellowing envelope shook between her fingers. It had come that morning. A letter from the hospital. Final notice. $312,450. That was the number that might save her brother's life or end it. Mateo was just 16, soft-voiced and stubborn, with a heart too fragile and lungs that fought him with every breath, a rare genetic condition. Surgery was no longer optional. It was urgent. And Ella was out of time. She had tried everything. Crowdfunding had raised a pathetic sum. Her jobs waitressing at a bar in the evenings, cleaning offices after midnight, and working part-time as a caregiver on weekends were just enough to cover rent, utilities, and the medications that delayed the inevitable. She slept in intervals, ate crackers with ketchup, and gave blood for the prepaid gift cards. She had dreams, once real ones. She wanted to be a nurse, to build something better, to help people. But dreams don't feed the sick. They don't pay hospital bills. And tonight, she was done pretending they could. Her shift at the lounge started at 6 p.m. It was one of those sleek, midtown places where glass floors and golden chandeliers tried too hard to impress, and the air always smelled like perfume, whiskey, and desperation. Rich clients came in every night, some married, most pretending not to be. Ella wore the standard black dress uniform and a name tag she hated. She knew how to smile with her mouth while hiding the rest. She didn't make eye contact unless it meant a tip. The moment she walked in, Layla, the bartender and her only friend in the city, gave her a warning look. "He's back," she whispered. Ella frowned. "Who?" "The guy from last week. Tall, cold stare, crazy rich. Asked about you." Ella's stomach sank. She remembered him. A man in a dark suit, alone in a corner booth, quiet and unreadable. He hadn't touched his drink, just watched her the whole night with eyes like winter steel. He'd tipped generously, too generously. She shrugged it off. "I'm here to serve drinks, not entertain men with black cards." Layla smirked, but there was something else in her gaze. Concern. Ella started her rounds, balancing glasses and ignoring catcalls like second nature. The booth in the back was lit softly, and sure enough, he was there again. Damien Cross. She didn't know his name then, but she'd looked it up after his card said Cross Enterprises, CEO, private wealth firm, net worth in the billions. This time, when she reached his table, he looked up. "Miss Rivera." She stiffened. He remembered her name. "I didn't give you my name," she said, keeping her tone even. He smiled faintly. "You wear a tag." She didn't respond, just pulled out her notepad. "What can I get you?" He didn't look at the menu. "Sit." Ella blinked. "Excuse me." He gestured to the seat across from him. "One conversation. 10 minutes. No obligations. I'll pay you for your time." Her instincts screamed at her to walk away. She'd dealt with men like him before, the ones who think everything has a price. But something about his voice was different. Not entitled, not arrogant, just calm still. She hesitated. "I'll make it worth your while," he added. 10 minutes, she thought. What's the worst that could happen in 10 minutes? She sat. He watched her like he was seeing through layers no one else noticed. "I know you're struggling." Ella stiffened, not in a creepy way. He added quickly, "I do my research. You're working 3 jobs. Medical bills, your brother." Anger flared in her chest. "Did you dig into my life just to show off?" "No." He leaned forward. "I did it because I want to help." She scoffed. "Help? You mean fix? You think you can throw money at my problems and feel like a good person for it?" His voice dropped. "Would it be so wrong if I did?" Silence stretched between them. Then he slid an envelope across the table. White, unmarked. "What's this?" He said it like it meant nothing. $1 million. Ella's heart nearly stopped. "I'm offering it to you for one night. Just one. No expectations beyond that. You choose how we spend it. Dinner, talking, silence, whatever you're comfortable with." She stared at him, the words hitting her like stones. He continued, "You walk away after. No strings. But if even a piece of you thinks this money could save your brother, then take it." Ella stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. Her pulse was thunder. "Do you think I'm desperate enough to sell myself?" Damien looked her dead in the eye. I think you're brave enough to consider the impossible for someone you love." She walked away. All night, the envelope sat on the edge of the bar, untouched, unopened, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not when she served drinks, not when she clocked out, not when she walked home under a sky that didn't seem to care. She found herself at the kitchen table at 2:17 a.m., staring at it. Her mother had always told her that choices define us, not just what we say yes to, but what we're willing to walk away from. Ella opened the envelope. Inside, a cashier's check. Real, verified. She folded it back slowly, breathing hard. The silence around her seemed to thrum with noise. She could say no. She wanted to say no, but her brother's face flickered in her mind. His eyes when the doctor said too late, the machines beeping, the quiet way he held her hand and said, "I'm scared." What if one night meant he'd get a lifetime? What if saving him meant surrendering a piece of herself? And what if that one night didn't go the way she feared at all? That thought scared her more than the money. She picked up her phone, hands trembling. She typed one sentence, "I'll meet you tomorrow." Sent the message sat on the screen like a wound, but deep inside her, beneath the fear, the anger, the shame, something else stirred. Hope. Because maybe, just maybe, that one night wouldn't destroy her. Maybe it would save them both. Asterisk. The hotel wasn't like anything Ella had ever seen. It didn't loom like the cold glass towers downtown, trying to scrape the sky with status. No, this place was quiet, historic, tucked behind ivy-covered walls in an older part of the city. Its stonework whispered of secrets kept and time forgotten. The kind of place people passed by without noticing, unless they knew exactly where to look. She hesitated outside the arched entrance, her fingers twitching around the strap of her worn-out bag. Her reflection stared back from the polished glass of the door-neat coat, hair pinned with care, trembling eyes pretending not to be afraid. Her heart thudded like it was trying to escape her chest. The check still sat in her pocket, untouched. She hadn't spent a cent, not yet. Part of her still wanted to run, but she stepped inside. The warmth hit her first, subtle, not artificial. The scent of cedarwood and something floral drifted through the air. A concierge nodded politely, as if she belonged. No judgment, no questioning glance. Maybe that was the strangest part. A woman led her upstairs to the top floor, stopping at a mahogany double door. "He's inside," the woman said softly, then disappeared like she'd never been there at all. Ella stared at the handle for a full minute before her hand moved. She turned it slowly, breathing in courage she didn't feel. The room wasn't what she expected. There were no candles, no champagne, no shadows lurking with intent. Instead, soft lighting illuminated a cozy, open space. A fire crackled in a stone hearth. A small dining table had been set by the windows, overlooking a garden that shimmered under the moonlight. Dot and Damien sat there, alone, reading. He stood when he saw her, placing the book aside. "You came." She nodded, unsure if her voice would betray her. "I did." He studied her, not with the hunger she feared, not with possession, but with something quieter, something curious. "I had dinner brought up." "You haven't eaten, have you?" She blinked. "You don't want to talk first?" His brow lifted slightly. "We'll talk, we'll eat, we'll let the night go where it needs to." She sat, still wary, like a bird too used to cages. The table was set for two, real silverware, crystal glasses. She noticed details, always had. It helped her survive. He poured water into her glass, then his own. No wine, no trap, just kindness. "I don't drink," he offered. She glanced at him. "You assumed I wouldn't either." "I hoped." His voice was even, but something in it sounded like regret. They ate in quiet for a few moments. The food was warm, tender. Ella hadn't tasted real meat in months. It felt wrong to enjoy it. He must have noticed her hesitation. "You don't owe me anything, Ella." She froze mid-bite. "You gave me $1 million. I offered it to you," he corrected. "You haven't spent it. You could walk out right now, and I wouldn't stop you." She searched his face. It didn't make sense. No one gave away that kind of money without wanting something. "You don't want anything?" she asked. Damien looked at her for a long time. Then he leaned back in his chair. "I want peace," he said simply. "And I haven't had it in a long time." Something in his voice shifted the air. She studied his face. There were fine lines near his eyes, not from age but from exhaustion, like someone who had lived through something but hadn't quite made it out the other side. She didn't know why, but she asked, "What happened to you?" He looked toward the fire. The pause was long enough that she thought he might not answer. My wife died 3 years ago. Ella's breath caught. It wasn't sudden, he continued, eyes distant. It was cancer, slow, cruel. There's nothing noble about dying in a hospital bed. I watched her go, day by day, and when she was gone, all I could feel was silence. Ella said nothing. There was no answer for that kind of pain. She made me promise one thing before she passed, he said, that I would find someone, just one person to talk to, honestly, no masks, no lies. He looked at her then. I didn't think I'd find that in a bar. Ella was quiet. She felt the sharp sting of her own assumptions. Maybe she had imagined he was just another rich man trying to buy company. Maybe she had been wrong. And the money, she asked. What was that? Damien didn't flinch. Insurance, so you'd stay long enough to see I'm not who you thought I was. That admission sat between them like a bridge neither of them had expected to build. You could have just asked me to dinner, she murmured. I didn't think you'd say yes. She almost smiled. They talked for hours. About little things, big things, about Matteo, about the foster home she grew up in, about how she'd once dreamed of opening her own pediatric clinic, about how sometimes dreaming felt like a betrayal of reality. Damien listened, really listened. At one point, she asked, "Why me?" He didn't answer right away. You walked through that bar every night, like you had nothing left, but still found a way to look people in the eye. I saw something in you I hadn't seen in a long time. She swallowed the knot in her throat. It was past midnight when they moved to the couch by the fireplace. She curled her legs beneath her. He sat beside her, not close enough to touch, but near enough that she could feel his warmth. I thought this night would ruin me, she whispered. It's only begun, he replied. And in that moment, soft, still, unspoken, something changed. There were no grand gestures, no sweeping music, just the quiet understanding of two broken people sharing a rare, unguarded breath of peace. Ella didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone, and neither did he. The night ended without a kiss, without a touch, without any of the things Ella had feared and, maybe, secretly, expected. Instead, Damien walked her to the elevator, like a gentleman from another century. There was a pause, not awkward but weighty, as if both of them knew something unspoken had taken root between them. "Thank you," she said softly, unsure of what exactly she was thanking him for. Dinah, the conversation, the quiet safety. He nodded, eyes holding hers just long enough to steal her breath again. "You have my number. Use it for anything. No conditions." The elevator doors slid closed. As she descended, Ella felt something strange twist inside. Her, like grief and hope, had decided to hold hands. By the time she stepped out onto the cold street, the sky had begun to lighten. She took the long way home, walking instead of taking the train, $1 million in her coat pocket, and still she moved like someone who had nothing, because in many ways, she still did. But when she reached her small apartment, something had shifted. The air felt different. She dropped her bag gently, walked to the kitchen, and opened the drawer where she hid her unopened bills. She stared at the envelopes, all screaming urgency in red ink. They hadn't changed, but she had. She pulled them all out and started sorting. The first thing she did that morning wasn't buy anything extravagant. It wasn't even for herself. It was calling the hospital billing department to make a full payment on Matteo's last surgery, the one she'd promised she'd handle, somehow, someday. Her voice shook, but her hand was steady as she read the numbers off the check. She called Damien after that. Not to thank him, but to tell him she had followed through. There was silence on the other end. Then a quiet, "I'm glad," and that was it. In the days that followed, Ella expected the world to feel different. It didn't. The trains still ran late. Her job at the clinic was still underpaid and overworked. But there was space now, a kind of invisible margin in her life where fear had once lived. She no longer skipped meals. She went to bed before midnight for the first time in years. She even bought herself a proper winter coat. And Damien, he didn't disappear. He didn't press, didn't call every day. But when he did, his presence felt gentle, like he was there if she needed him, but would never try to own her. It confused her at first. Men like him didn't wait. They conquered. But Damien Hart was not like other men. One Thursday afternoon, she found herself sitting in a park bench near the hospital, sipping coffee, staring at the city skyline. She dialed his number without overthinking it. "Meet me," she said when he answered. I don't want to talk on the phone." They met at a quiet gallery tucked into a side street she'd discovered years ago. She'd never been able to afford the entry fee before. That day, she bought both their tickets. He didn't comment on it, just smiled. They wandered the gallery in silence, letting the paintings speak for them. Somewhere between the second and third room, she turned to him. "You could have had anyone. Why me?" He didn't flinch at the question, but his answer took a while. "Because I know what it feels like to be invisible, to be drowning in plain sight. And you were still swimming." She didn't cry, not in that moment, but something broke in her, something old and brittle. Later, they walked the city together, neither willing to end the day. The sun dipped below the rooftops, throwing gold across their path. They talked about music, food, childhood dreams. He told her he once wanted to be a pilot. She told him she used to pretend to be a doctor with a plastic stethoscope and a teddy bear that had survived too many fake surgeries. That night, when he dropped her off, he handed her an envelope. "Before you open this, promise me something." She eyed him suspiciously. "What is it?" "Just promise." She sighed. "Fine, I promise." She opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten, from his late wife. Ella froze. Damien spoke, his voice lower than usual. "She wrote it the week before she passed. Told me to give it to someone I trusted. Someone who reminded me that there's still good in the world." Ella didn't know what to say. She held the letter like it was made of glass. Damien continued. "You don't have to read it now, or ever. Just keep it. It's the only thing I have of hers I've never let go." Ella clutched the envelope to her chest. "I don't know what this is," she said softly. "Between us." "Neither do I," he replied. "But I know it's real, and for now, that was enough. Because sometimes, life doesn't hand you answers, just the courage to keep asking better questions." And somewhere deep inside her, Ella began to believe not in fairy tales, not in saviors, but in second chances, real ones. Asterisk. Ella didn't sleep that night, not because of fear this time, but because of the letter. It sat unopened on the small wooden table in her apartment, beside her cold tea and a flickering candle. She had read the name on the envelope so many times it had begun to blur. "To the one who reminds him to breathe again." Not a name, just a purpose. Ella didn't feel ready to read it. Not yet. She wasn't sure she ever would be. But the thought that this woman, this stranger she'd never met, had trusted her with something so intimate, so final, it unsettled her in a way she couldn't explain. It also lit something inside her. That next morning, Ella returned to the pediatric clinic early. The waiting room was already half full. Parents with tired eyes, children with coughs, bandaged knees, runny noses, and the kind of trust only the young can give so freely. This place had been her world for years, her haven, her battlefield, her burden. Now, with the weight of medical debt lifted, she saw it differently. She didn't just want to show up anymore, she wanted to make it better. She spent the rest of the day reviewing old files, setting up extra appointments for uninsured families, even paying out of pocket to restock the medicine cabinet. No one questioned her. She had always been quiet, responsible, tired. Now she was different, purposeful. Later that afternoon, she stood by the window in the break room, sipping coffee and staring out at the city skyline. Her co-worker Marcus walked in, raising an eyebrow. "You planning a coup or something?" She smiled faintly. "Maybe. You've been on fire lately. Did something happen?" Ella thought for a second. "Yeah, someone reminded me what it feels like to be seen." He nodded slowly, then left her alone with that truth. That evening, her phone buzzed. A text from Damien. "Can I take you somewhere? Something important." Her fingers hovered over the screen. She typed a simple response. "Yes, but no suits. I'm serious." His reply came with a laughing emoji. She smiled, genuinely. An hour later, he picked her up in a weathered navy blue pickup truck. It didn't match his usual style. No polished driver, no sleek black car, just him. She raised an eyebrow. "This yours?" He nodded. "Was my dad's. I kept it after he passed. Reminds me to stay grounded." "I like it," she said, and meant it. He drove them out of the city. Not far, but far enough that the skyline melted into trees and open sky. It was the kind of night that smelled like fresh earth and wet leaves. The kind of night where silence didn't feel lonely. They pulled up to a small community center, a red brick building surrounded by a gravel lot and flickering lights. "What is this?" she asked. He turned off the engine, then looked at her. I used to volunteer here, before everything, before I lost myself." They walked inside together. Children's drawings lined the hallway walls. Ella paused in front of one, a crayon sun, lopsided but radiant. Underneath, a name, Samira, age 7. Inside the main room, laughter echoed. Tables were set up with crafts, snacks, and games. Volunteers moved like gentle guardians. One older woman waved at Damien. He smiled. "That's Janine. She runs this place. Taught me everything I know about grace." Ella turned to him. "Why bring me here?" He looked at her, something in his expression both soft and serious. "Because you give me hope," he said, "and I needed to remember what that feels like." The words hit her harder than she expected. They didn't stay long, just enough to talk to some kids, laugh with Janine, and help clean up the folding chairs. On the drive back, Damien was quiet, so was Ella, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet you earn. As they neared her apartment, she finally spoke. "You know," she said softly. "I spent years thinking love was a luxury I couldn't afford, that it was something only safe people had the right to believe in." He turned to her. "And now, I think maybe I was wrong." He pulled over to the side of the road, just before her building, turned off the ignition, looked her directly in the eye. "I don't want to scare you," he said, "but I'm falling for you, Ella, not because you needed me, but because you didn't pretend, because you fought, because you still do." Her throat tightened. She had no clever response, no practiced line. So she did something she rarely did. She reached for his hand and just held it. For now, that was enough. She didn't know what the future would bring, but for the first time, it felt like something she had a say in. Like maybe she didn't have to survive it alone. Later that night, long after he left, Ella finally opened the letter. Inside were just a few paragraphs. "If you're reading this, it means he let you in. That alone means you're rare. Treasure him, if you can. Not because he's perfect, but because he knows what it means to lose, and to love anyway. Tell him I kept my promise, and thank you for being the reason." He's breathing again. Ella folded the letter slowly, tears falling onto her lap, not from sadness, but from something quieter. Grace. Because love, she realized, didn't always arrive in grand gestures. Sometimes, it found you when you were finally ready to receive it. The rain didn't let up for 2 days. It wasn't the violent, stormy kind that thrashed the streets, but the kind that settled in slowly, like the sky had decided it needed time to mourn. For Ella, it felt oddly fitting. The city moved slower. The noise was softer. She walked with her hood up and her head down, lost in a quiet swirl of memories and meaning. The letter haunted her, but not in a painful way. It lived in her thoughts like a warm echo, as if the woman behind those words, Damien's late wife, was watching her from somewhere unseen, gently urging her forward. Ella had never believed in signs. She believed in bills, in bruises, in the weight of real things. But something about this moment in her life, how it all lined up, how one decision had led her into a world she hadn't dared imagine, felt more than coincidental. At the clinic, she found herself staring at the wall of children's artwork again. Her gaze landed on a new edition, a crooked heart with band-aids drawn across it, and the words "healed is still strong." She didn't know which child had drawn it, but she wished she could frame it. That evening, Damien texted her again. "I want you to meet someone. He's important to me. Sunday." She stared at the message for a long time. It had been weeks since that first night. The $1 million was still untouched in her account. Well, untouched for herself at least. She had paid Mateo's bills, funded equipment for the clinic, donated anonymously to a scholarship program for single mothers at the community college she once attended. But she hadn't changed her lifestyle. Not really. She still rode the subway, still made her own coffee, still fixed the loose doorknob on her apartment herself, and she still hadn't told Damien what she did with the money. She didn't know why she was waiting. Maybe she feared that if she revealed how much it mattered to her, how deeply it had saved her, he would realize how fragile she truly had been. But Sunday arrived anyway, and with it, the beginning of a new chapter. He picked her up in that same old truck. No pretense, no extravagance. He wore jeans and a worn jacket, and for the first time, she noticed a small scar above his eyebrow, a story she hadn't heard yet. They drove north this time, into the hills. Ella watched the trees blur past, wondering who this mystery person was. A relative, a friend from his past. When they pulled into the gravel driveway of a small lakeside cabin, she wasn't sure what to expect. The cabin was simple, weathered but cozy looking. Smoke curled from the chimney. A dog barked from somewhere. Behind the porch, a tall man with graying hair stepped out, wiping his hands on a towel. "Ella, this is Mason," Damien said. "He's the man who raised me." Mason's smile was gentle but steady, the kind of smile that had seen a lot and learned to hold space for silence. "You're even prettier than he described," Mason said, reaching out to shake her hand. "But I'm guessing you're not the type who needs compliments." Ella laughed, a little disarmed. "I usually just settle for decent coffee." They spent the afternoon inside, talking, sharing a simple meal Mason had prepared. The cabin walls were lined with books and framed photographs. Most of the photos were of people Ella didn't recognize, but she spotted Damien in a few much younger, always smiling beside a woman who must have been his wife. Mason caught her gaze. "She had a light in her," he said softly. "And so do you." Later, while Damien and Mason chopped firewood outside, Ella wandered through the small home. She paused at a photograph on the mantel. Damien and his late wife leaning into each other, eyes closed, mid-laugh. Ella didn't feel jealousy. She felt honored when Damien came back in, cheeks flushed from the cold. He found her standing there. "She looks kind," Ella said. "She was," Damien replied. "She was also loud, stubborn, and convinced she could cook when she absolutely could not." They laughed together, not with sadness, but with remembrance. As the fire crackled behind them, Damien pulled something from his jacket pocket, a small leather-bound notebook. "She kept this," he said, placing it in her hands. "Wrote in it almost every day the last year. I want you to have it." Ella hesitated. "Damien, I don't know if I should." "I do," he said. She would have wanted this. She believed stories should be passed on, especially the hard ones. Back in her apartment that night, Ella opened the notebook. The first page was dated exactly a year before the woman passed. "I don't know who you are, but I know you exist. I feel it. I've asked the stars to send him someone who sees him the way I did, flawed, funny, wounded, whole. If you're holding this now, it means you arrived. Thank you." Ella closed the notebook, tears slipping down her cheeks. It was too much, too generous. Human. The next day, she went to the bank and withdrew $10,000 from her account, not for herself, for a boy named Reggie, whose mother worked the overnight shift at the clinic. He needed a new wheelchair and specialized physical therapy. Ella delivered it anonymously. She didn't tell Damien, not because she was hiding, but because the good she was doing now wasn't about proving anything. It was about finally becoming the woman she'd always hoped she'd be, back when she still believed in dreams. And one rainy afternoon, while sitting by the window with a cup of tea, she realized something. Love hadn't saved her. She had saved herself. But love, real love, had given her the space to do it. It didn't demand. It didn't rush. It didn't claim. It waited. And now it was beginning. It began with a whisper. Not the kind spoken aloud, but the kind that rises from within the soft voice you spend years ignoring until it grows strong enough to become a truth. Ella heard. It's for the first time in the early light of morning, as the city yawned itself awake beneath her window. She sat in silence, holding the notebook Damien had given her, flipping through page after page of thoughts, fears, confessions, and dreams from a woman who had loved deeply and without apology. And between those lines, Ella found a reflection of herself, not in the tragedies, but in the bravery it took to keep loving despite them. She hadn't planned what came next. Maybe that was the point. She put on her coat, stepped into the rain-soaked street, and walked toward something that felt like destiny. The coffee shop on 83rd and Mercer was quiet, the usual weekday rush still an hour away. She'd asked Damien to meet her there, needing something more intimate than their usual walks, more grounded than a fancy dinner. It was the same place she used to escape to when her dreams still felt young before they were traded for medical bills and shift work. When he arrived, he looked different, lighter, not because life had gotten easier, but because somewhere along the way, they had stopped carrying their pain alone. He smiled when he saw her, like she was exactly where she belonged. She didn't waste time. "There's something I haven't told you," she said, her voice steady but soft. "About the money." He didn't flinch, just waited. "I used it," she continued, "but not for me. I paid Mateo's bills, donated to programs I care about, helped families at the clinic. I haven't touched $1 for myself. Damien leaned back, exhaled slowly. Why are you telling me now? Because I don't want there to be anything between us that's built on silence. I don't want your love if it's based on what you think I am. I want it to grow from who I really am. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he reached across the table and took her hand. I didn't fall in love with someone who needed saving, he said. I fell in love with someone who didn't wait to be rescued. Ella's eyes stung, not from guilt, from release. There was something healing about being known completely and still being chosen. Outside, the rain softened to a drizzle. The city moved around them, unaware that something profound had just passed between two people sitting in the corner of a small cafe. They walked together afterward, no destination in mind. They passed a street performer playing a violin, his case open and nearly empty. Without a word, Ella placed a folded bill inside, not because she had to, but because it felt right. Damien smiled, recognizing something in her that mirrored his late wife's compassion. But it was different now. This love wasn't about filling a void. It was about starting something new, with someone who had their own fire. Weeks passed. They fell into a rhythm that felt less like routine and more like melody. Days spent working, evenings filled with simple joys, cooking meals, reading aloud, sitting in quiet companionship. There was no rush, no performance, just the slow, steady unfolding of a love built on truth. And then, one evening, just as spring broke through winter's grasp, Damien brought her back to the lakeside cabin. They stood on the dock together, the lake still and glassy, the sky painted with lavender and peach. I used to come here after she passed, he said, to feel close to her. Ella nodded. And now I come to feel close to myself. He turned toward her, took a small, velvet box from his coat pocket, but when he opened it, it wasn't a ring, it was a simple silver key. To this place, he said, to us. Not a proposal, not yet, just a door one I want to leave open for you, if you ever want to walk through it. Ella took the key in her palm. It was warm from his touch. I'm not running anymore, she whispered, from fear, or love, or what I believe I deserve. So yes, I'll walk through. They stood there, the lake quiet, the moment unbroken. She had no illusions. Life would still bring grief, complications, hard choices. But she also knew now that joy wasn't a prize at the end of struggle. It was a companion to it, a reminder that even in the hardest moments, beauty waits to be noticed. The woman who once traded one night for a chance to save her mother now stood at the edge of a life she had built, not bought. And as Ella looked out over the water, her fingers wrapped around the key, she realized something stunning. She hadn't just changed her life, she had rewritten her story, from surviving to living. From silence to truth. From being seen to being loved. And this time, she wasn't afraid of the ending, because the best stories don't end, they evolve, and hers had just begun.